Thinking of selling your business? Well, you've come to the right video. I'm Michael Brandwine, and I'm going to show you how to sell your business in just 5 easy steps. We'll cover everything from valuation, LOI, negotiation, due diligence, and closing. Whether you're ready to retire, starting a new venture, or just passing it on, it can be rewarding, but very complex. So that's why it's important to plan ahead and follow the best practices to get the most out of your deal. Before we jump into it, make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Now, before you even think about selling your business, there are 2 things you need to know. Number 1, carefully plan and take the appropriate amount of time in determining how and when to sell your business. Because you need to understand what you're selling, why, what the tax ramifications and other ramifications are, and how to make a successful business closing. This will also give you time to make any necessary improvements to your business so that you can get the most value out of your business deal. Number 2, taxation. Do you need to think about your taxes early on? I know you'd probably rather hear about how to value your business or find a buyer. And yeah, I'll get to that in a little bit. But selling your business is a big transaction, and it can leave you with a big tax bill if you're not careful. By understanding taxes early on, you can make a better decision about when to sell and how to sell. You can also choose a deal structure that will result in a more favorable tax situation. Let's start with capital gains tax. If you sell certain assets in your business, or maybe even the whole business, you may be subject to capital gains tax. The amount of tax you owe may depend on what you're selling and how long you've owned the asset and/or the business. Depreciation recapture. If you depreciated certain assets in your business, you may have to recapture that depreciation, thus incurring tax liability upon sale of the asset or the business. State taxes are very important. It's not just Uncle Sam who may want to tax you, but it could be state or states who want a piece of the action. Depending on what you're selling and how your business is set up, you may be subject to self-employment tax, which generally is a negative for anyone selling a business or an asset. That only increases your tax burden. Depending on what you're selling and what your tax rate is, you may be subject to AMT, alternative minimum tax. That generally is worse off for taxpayers than not being subject to AMT. Thus, it's important to understand the tax consequences when selling your business or an asset within a business. Valuation is very, very crucial when selling your business. You need to understand what your business is worth so you can get the most bang for your bucks when you sell. Oftentimes, people will use various services like attestation services to value their business. It can take several months to value your business, but you don't want to rush this. You want to take your time to make sure you get it right. Now, let's use a fun example. Imagine I'm selling a bakery. This bakery has an annual revenue of $250,000 and an average net profit margin of 10%. So the annual net profit would be $25,000. Now, depending on industry and other factors, I can probably approximate that the value of my business is roughly $50,000. Now remember, that was just a simplified example. An actual bakery business would probably look a lot different financially speaking. But hopefully, this demonstrates what it's actually like to value a business. The second step in selling your business is preparing for sale. This usually includes drafting and going over legal documents, contracts, finances, lease records. This is a great time to upgrade your business to attract buyers. Now, you might look at this as a very time-consuming process, but this is an incredibly crucial step in order to have a successful transaction. A well-prepared business is going to attract more buyers and make the transaction process even smoother. So what's going to be my financial records? Things like bank statements, tax returns, profit and loss statements, legal documents. What are some of the legal documents? Contracts, permits, things like that. While going through these documents, you want to make sure that your business is in good standing as well. So what does it mean to be in good standing? Well, generally speaking, to be in compliance with local, state, and government regulations and laws. Now, what if your business has multiple owners? Well, you want to make sure that you have an operating agreement that's actually executed that specifies the terms of how to actually proceed with the sale of a business. So let's go back to our bakery example for a second. Here are a plethora of documents that you're going to need to get in order to sell your business. And if you come to the Gordon Law Group, we can help you get that together. Step 3, finding a buyer for your business and the letter of intent. Finding a buyer for your business can be hard, but there's a variety of ways to go about it. You can connect with other professionals. You can go on websites like LinkedIn. You can even try to find a broker. You could advertise your business for sale. Take out a giant billboard that says, I'm selling my bakery. Consider strategic buyers. Maybe you go to your landlord and say, hey, you know that bakery I have? It's for sale. Once you've identified your potential buyer, the next step is the letter of intent. So what is the letter of intent? It's essentially the roadmap for the entire transaction. It's very, very important because it's going to map out the terms of the deal, which are binding and non-binding, and essentially provide you guidance with your business sale. So what's important to know when you're drafting the letter of intent? Well, you need to know the terms of the deal, what's binding and not binding, the parties obviously, and essentially anything else that you want or maybe don't want to be sold in your deal. So with a letter of intent, understand that typically the buyer drafts the letter of intent, not the seller. You as the seller need to review it, make changes, and make sure that you're getting what you want out of the deal. Okay, so let's go back to my bakery example. Now I have this wonderful letter of intent. So what is it? Well, it states the date, the buyer, the seller, that transaction price, and when the buyer is going to pay the seller. And of course, you've got to sign it. So this letter of intent, right, looks good, but there's a couple key things missing. This is why you want to get a lawyer, because that lawyer can help you identify them. For instance, I don't see anything here about binding or non-binding. Those provisions are very, very important, and an experienced lawyer can help you identify those things that are missing from this document and make sure that your letter of intent is up to par. I actually wouldn't use this letter of intent because it's missing a lot of meaty stuff. So you know what I'm going to do? Goodbye. Due diligence is very important. If you're a seller and you've identified a buyer to buy your bakery, you want to make sure the buyer is comfortable during the entire process. You don't want your buyer to encounter any surprises, and you want the deal to close. That's why due diligence is so important. For instance, financial due diligence. The buyer will probably want to investigate your bank records, tax returns. If you organize everything properly, you should be all set. Legal due diligence, contracts, permits, licenses. The buyer wants to make sure that you're in good standing. How about operational due diligence? Well, I'm sure the buyer wants to make sure that you're operating the business correctly and that there's no deficiencies. HR due diligence, things like employee benefits, employment agreements, stuff like that. Intellectual property due diligence. In our bakery example, you want to make sure that you understand, if you're the buyer, that you're buying something that's trademarked, for instance, the logo of the bakery, or how about that recipe book? Does that have a valid copyright? Let's take our bakery example. The buyer is going to go over all these forms, even this one, that one, and oh yeah, that one. Step 4, negotiations. This is a crucial step in selling your business. Both parties should come to the table prepared and ready to negotiate in good faith. So what's typically discussed during negotiations? Well, as you can imagine, money, how the money's paid out, and a lot of the core terms of the deal and how it relates to the payout. In the negotiation process, there are various terms. You can almost consider it like wheeling and dealing, just like buying a used car. It's always important to remember that good negotiations take time. Never rush into anything, just take it slow. Negotiations can be very stressful. Having an attorney at your back can help mitigate and relieve a lot of that stress. So, you're interested in buying my bakery, huh? Well, I want $500,000. Well, I am very interested in buying your bakery, but after looking at all those due diligence documents, I think I'd rather offer you $50,000. $50,000, huh? I accept. Okay, so that may have not been the best negotiation ever, but I think you get what I'm driving at here. The 5th and final step, closing. So what is closing? You've done everything up to this point. You're ready to sell your business. You're going to dot the I's, cross the T's, and the deal's going to close. Closing typically involves the execution of several legal documents, including bill of sale and an assignment of ownership. There's also a wonderful IRS form, 8594, that'll go along with it. The purchase agreement is essentially the master document that governs the entire transaction. And the bill of sale is a document that essentially solidifies that the deal has happened and you are selling the business. So what is this 8594 asset acquisition statement? Well, it's essentially a form that's going to be submitted by the buyer and the seller, usually working together, to the IRS to notify the IRS that this deal has closed. All right, let's look at our bakery example just one more time. I've got my bill of sale, and I got my 8594, the tax form. All right, everything should be ready to go. Congrats, hooray, I sold my bakery. Hey, so I sold my business. When can I expect a payout? Well, depending on the terms of the deal, it could be at closing immediately. Wow. Or it could be months or even further down the line. It all depends on the terms of the deal. So what's the timeline of a deal look like? Could you do it in a couple days or a week? Maybe. Is it generally recommended to go that fast? Maybe not. You want to make sure that you're taking your time when selling or buying a business. Hey, if you want to know more about mergers and acquisitions, make sure you check out my other videos. I've got many videos, and as you can tell, this subject is one of my passions. Make sure you like, subscribe. If you're thinking about selling or buying a business, put it in the comments below. As always, if you need any mergers and acquisitions help, contact the Gordon Law Group.